Welcome to the Ada K Show. I'm your host, Ada K, and I am a criminal justice major. I am also a deaf courtroom commentator, breaking down the gripping courtroom drama while providing full ASL interpretation, making justice accessible to everyone. Grab a cup of Java and let's dive in. And don't forget, comment, like, and subscribe. And if you love this channel, please become a member. Good evening, everybody. I need a sound check with my mods, if you don't mind, please. Thank you very much. I hope this finds you well. Oh my gosh, honey. Angela and June. Thank you guys for joining. I'm so excited. This is going to be a long deep dive. And what even excites me more is I'm wearing my great-grandmother's glasses that are actually helping me, not with the close-up stuff or the far, right here, so I can read better. Thank you, great grandma. I just came across them and I went, It says that my regular eyeglasses, the ones that Angela so greatly turned me onto, are supposed to be delivered tomorrow, but I'm not holding out much hope because of the storm. Yeah, not going to. So, how's everybody doing? We had a long day in court. We're going to be coming back tomorrow at 10 a.m. unless my mods decide otherwise. The Brandon Banfield trial is not going to be coming on tomorrow. Their court is closed due to bad weather. Yeah, they got to dig themselves out of snow. Speaking of bad weather, I only got my heating pad set at 5 now. It was set at 8. Yeah. It got up in the 30s today, and my hot water. Well, I don't have hot water yet. I got to let the hot water heater do its thing. But we finally have running water when you turn on the hot water. So maybe I'll get a nice hot bath tonight. What do you think? That would be nice, right? Well, welcome everybody to tonight. We are doing something a little different, and we're something kind of important. We're going to walk through, and we're going to talk about line by line through the Uvalde family civil lawsuit. This isn't drama. This isn't speculation. This is the official record. These are words of the families themselves put forward in their fight for answers and accountability, and most importantly, the truth. Follow me for my coverage. You know I'll take these documents seriously, so we're not going to rush through this. We're not going to sensationalize this. We're just going to read through it and talk about things as they pop up. You are free to definitely comment. Please share and subscribe. And really would like your words and takes on this. Mods, you can always pop in if and when you wish, in any manner you wish. We're going to read, analyze, and explain exactly what the lawsuit is alleging. It really gives an amazing timeline of not only the failures, but also its claims and legal strategy behind. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the families and the survivors. Their pain is not content. This coverage is not entertainment. This is a read-through. It's about understanding what they are asking the courts to recognize and why this case matters far beyond Uvalde. So settle in, grab your notes, grab your cup of coffee, maybe your Dr. Peppers and coffee. And let's start let's step into the document and start talking about it, okay? Oh, I didn't mean to do that. You know what? I might do that. Let me see how it looks. I think I can do that today. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Okay, I think that works. What do you think, mods? I think that'll be okay. If it gets too distracting, let me know. I'm going to take these rings off. They're getting distracting. I'm going to try and read it from this screen. I may have to make some adjustments. Okay. So this is the United States District Court, Western District of Texas, Austin Division. Y'all, this is a lot here. These are all of the plaintiffs, and some of them are considered non-mentioned, and individually and grandmother. I mean, it just goes on. And then these are all the people that they are suing. And does 1 to 3,000. That means anybody else that wants to hop onto this later can hop in. So if they were affected and they haven't stepped forward yet, but they want to, they can be added to this at any time. Okay. Yeah. Hence, does 1 to 3,000 individually. The Uvalde, who is it against? Oh, the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, the UCISD, the UCISD Principal Mandy Gutierrez, the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department, the UCISD PD, the Chief Pedro Arnado, UCISD PD Officer Adrian Gonzalez, UCISD PD Jesse J.J. Suarez, the City of Uvalde, Uvalde Police Department, UPD, Lieutenant Marino Pargras, UPD Sergeant Eduardo Canales. I'm really bad with names, y'all. UPD Lieutenant Xavier Martinez, UPD Sergeant Daniel Coronado, UPD Officer Louis Landry, UPD Officer Donald Page, UPD Officer Justin Mendoza, Texas Department of Public Safety, TDPS, Regional Director Victor Escalon, TDPS Director Stephen McCraw, Captain Joel Betancourt, I think that's better. Texas Department Sergeant Juan Maldrano, and those 1 through 600. Yeah. So we're going to get into this. And I think I've got this lined up. Let me do a little modification because now I have, I think that works because I had the faces of the comments kind of going over it. So can y'all read that? Y'all let me know if you can read this, if it's okay with y'all. Okay, here we go. Plaintiffs individually on behalf of all other similarly statute students, student parents, and or guardians, teachers, schools, support staff who were in attendance. I'm going to have to do it the hard way, y'all. I can't read that. I'm going to have to, give me a moment though. I'm going to have to move this to the center because I cannot read it that way. How did I do? Full screen mode. I'm going to put this over here so I can see it and the comments. There we go. Yay! I think that's going to work better. Guardians, teachers, school support staff who were in attendance or had children in attendance. A defendant, Uvalde Consolidated ISD Robb Elementary School, May 24, 2022, and who have sustained emotional and physical damage as a result of defendants' conduct and omissions on that day, collectively, is a class member lawsuit by and through undersigned counsel, hereby file the class mass action complaint based on plaintiff's personal knowledge and upon information and beliefs as to the plaintiffs, the class against defendant City Uvalde et al. And alleges as follows. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Get my coffee. Regrettably, this court must preside over yet another reoccurring and deeply tragic occurrence where once again elementary age children and their dedicated teachers have been murdered and emotionally maimed by a deeply troubled young man wielding a semi-automatic machine gun. Well, whoa, wait a minute. That is not a machine gun. Not a machine gun. An AK, an AR is not a machine gun. in my humble opinion. Now, if you're an expert in weaponry and you want to come argue that, I'll accept it. But I find that word machine in there to be maybe a little overkill, not to unintended. In his delusion, colored by glorification of violence perpetrated by both the video games and targeted weapons manufacturer and advertisement, mercilessly released his own childhood trauma and pain upon unsuspecting, beautiful, and buoyant young children and teachers at the school. This interrogation of this now all too frequent tragedy took place on May 24, 2022 at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. Uvalde, Texas is a close-knit rural community located 80 miles from the United States and Mexico border. Robb Elementary School is a school administered by Defendant Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, or called CISD. In administering the schools under its control, the CISD employed its own police department, CISD PD. Not only had the CISD PD undertaken the state-sponsored and mandated active shooter response training, but the CISD additionally propagated its own required protocols and standards to employ in the event of an active shooter on one or more campuses. Okay, problem with me on this. I want to see their paperwork. I would like a hard copy of what that their own policy is on top and above the training they already had. What is their policy? I want to see it in writing. I tried allocating it before tonight and I haven't been able to find it yet, but I'm looking. Despite such preparedness, the CISD Police Department, along with similarly trained law enforcement agencies, including the City of Uvalde PD, UPD, Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, San Antonio Police Department SWAT Unit, Uvalde Sheriff's Office, the United States Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and BORTAC, Border Patrol Task Force, fundamentally strayed from conducting themselves in conformity with what they knew to be a well-established protocol and standards for responding to an active shooter. Thus, on account of such abject failure by such highly trained law enforcement agencies, the plaintiff and the punitive class members will now be forced to endure the indelible and forever lasting trauma that defendants measurably caused and amplified on account of their contemptible and flagrant affirmative conduct in failing to undertake prescribed courses of action. Plaintiffs and class members respectfully request that this court does its part in providing the framework for redressing and the harm that no amount of money nor forgiveness can ever absolve. All right. Now we're going to talk about this is just the overview. Now we're going to start stepping in, and y'all be ready because we are gonna probably have a code red in here, maybe twice. The case is brought under 42 U.S.C. cited 83 under the state law jurisdiction conferred on this court based on 28 U period S period C period cited 1331 blah 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 blah. This court additionally has jurisdiction to declare the rights of the parties and to grant all further relief deemed necessary and proper. Rule 65 of the Federal Rules of the Civic Procedure authorities this court to grant injunctive relief as well as authority to award costs of attorney's fees under cited. The venue is proper within the Western District, so that validates that this is the proper court to try this in. So the plaintiff student class representative, JP, is a minor student who was 10 years old when he was in attendance of Robb Elementary on May 24th of 22. JC's parents, plaintiffs Daniel and Crystal P., are suing defendants on JP's behalf. The plaintiff JP is also suing defendants on behalf of the class of students who were on the premise of Robb Elementary on May 24, 22, and who sustained emotional or physical damage. It should be or physical damages as a result of the defendant's conduct and omission on that date. J. P. is his parent and his parents, plaintiff Daniel P. and Crystal P., are the parents and legal guardians of JP, who are the family. So this is we're not going to go through each one of these. Maybe we should. There's a lot. The plaintiff, Captain Andrea V., the same thing with the parents. She was in attendance of the school. She was 9 years old in the fourth grade, a 7-year-old in the third grade, respectively, on the May 24th. While attendance of the school, lockdown in room 105, was recessed and playground at the time of the shooting. The plaintiff, Andrea V., is the parent and legal guardian of the two children. Then we have Esther V., who was in attendance at the elementary school on May 24th, serving as his teacher's assistant in room 31 and 32, suing defendants on behalf of herself for punitive damages of teachers employed for the CISD. Plaintiff support staff class representative U, the school bus number 19. All right, I couldn't understand why was the school bus driver involved in this lawsuit. Y'all, just wait. Just wait till we get to that part, y'all. That's part of my code red. I emotionally went code red. I did on this one. Serving an employee and a bus driver and is a resident of Uvalde. Plaintiff ZR was 10 years old, fourth grade, and attendance in room 109. The plaintiff CR is a parent legal guardian. So all of these this is like room 103. So I'm going to scroll down through all of these, y'all. It's a lot. See what I mean by a lot? You're going to hear about all these people anyway. So this is the defendant. No, and once again, more people can be added to this suit on both sides. They are suing the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District and UISD is a public school district within the Uvalde city in Texas. Robb Elementary is a school administered by the UISD. The school district was at all relevant times responsible for the care and safety and management and the security of all student, teacher, staff, campus within its jurisdiction, including Robb Elementary. Sneeze coming. At all relevant times, UCISD was charged by law with the administration and operation of the school district, including employee control, supervision, discipline, training, and practices of all students, district, the UCISD personnel and employees, and with formulation of its policies, practices, and customs. In addition, the UCISD is responsible for ensuring, this is it right here. The UCISD is responsible for ensuring that personnel of school district obey the laws of the United States and the state of Texas, acted to fail and act. The district acted or failed to act in all relevant times through its employees, agents, and chief policymakers, and is liable for such actions for failure to act. Part of that paragraph there are also the teachers who were using magnets so their doors wouldn't lock. Now we're going to talk about the UCISD PD is an agency of the school district. The school district is charged by law with the administration and operation of the UCIS PD, including employment, control, supervision, discipline, training, and practices. Personnel, employees, and with the formulation of its policies, practices, and customs. The school district is legally responsible to act and omissions of the UCISD-PD. The school district and UCISD-PD policies, practices, and other customs were moving forces and caused the constitutional violation of the plaintiffs. In other words, they didn't do their job. Now we're going into the Department of Public Safety. They're being sued because they're an agency of the state. The state is charged by law with the administration and operations of the Texas Department of Public Safety, including the employment control, supervision, discipline training, same as the other. But here's where it's different. The school district is legally responsible for the acts and the omissions of the TSPD. The state of Texas and the TSPD policies, practices, and customs are moving forces and causing constitutional. It's the same thing. Defendant Pedro Arredondo, the chief, I'm going to call him Chief A, is an individual residing in Uvalde at all times. Chief A was a council member, and Chief A was a council member. They fought like hell for a couple years till they got him off of the city council. And he was the chief of police of the U.S. ISD-PD at the same time. Arredondo, is that it? Chief Arredondo, as the chief and final policy maker for the school district and the UCISD-PD, acted or failed to act with deliberate indifference to the constitutional rights of the plaintiffs. The rights of the plaintiffs under the state law, and is liable for the plaintiffs. All at relevant times. Chief Arredondo, Chief A, was acting within the scope of his employment under color of state law and his individual and official capacities. Defendant A, Arredondo, is being sued in both his individual and official capacity. So he's getting sued twice. Some of these people are getting sued multiple times. Now, Mandy Gutierrez, now that's an interesting character for me because I'm wondering what the hell was she doing through all of this? Absolutely nothing. Is an individual residing, of course, in Uvalde at all times relevant. Mandy Gutierrez, Principal Gutierrez, was the principal at Robb Elementary during that time. The principal was an official policymaker for the school district and official policymaker for Robb Elementary School. Principal Gutierrez acted or failed to act with deliberate indifference and constitutional rights, the same language as the others. She too is being sued twice, both as an individual and an official. Defendant Adrian Gonzalez, we know who he is. UCISD-PD. He is the police officer with the U.S. He acted in the scope of employment and under color of state law. He is being sued in his individual capacity. So they're only suing him individually. Well, I wonder how that's going to work now that he's been exonerated in a court of law. In a criminal court of law does not mean that he is going to get out of this lawsuit, but it's possible. It is possible. Defendant Jesus J.J. Suarez is an individual residing in Texas. At relevant times, Suarez was a UCISD board member and, upon information and belief, reserved officer for the UCISD-PD. Suarez, as a police officer of the UCISD-PD, he acted in the scope of his employment under color of the state law and is accounted for his actions and omissions, is liable to the plaintiff, individual capacity, being sued under individual capacity. Now, the city of Uvalde, now they did settle with the city, but then they're hitting them again with a different lawsuit. But the city has already settled with them for $2 million. I don't know what they're going to have to do with this part of the lawsuit. This is going to be interesting. I was wondering about double jeopardy because, like I said, they have already been sued and settled for $2 million. Is municipally organized under the laws of the state of Texas, the Uvalde Police Department. Is an agency of Uvalde. Uvalde is charged by law with the administration and operations of the Uvalde PD, including the employment, control, supervision, discipline, training practices of the Uvalde PD's personnel and employees, with the formulation its policies, practices, and customs. Uvalde is legally responsible for the act and admissions. So, in other words, the city as a whole may not have been there, but the PD is underneath the city and control of the city. You sue up. You don't sue down. You sue up. So they are suing up into the city. So defendant Mario Pargras is an individual at all times relevant, blah, 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 blah. He was a lieutenant with the Uvalde PD. Uvalde PD chief absence, Lieutenant Pargras was acting chief. So here's the thing. Everybody was saying, this is important. Everybody was saying that Gonzalez was the person who was the second in line. He is not second in line, y'all. This guy is second in line. So that was kind of something that I was like, what? Wait a minute. I went, I don't understand this because it was, I'm sorry, my allergies are swinging. June, Angela, anybody in chat, honey, anybody in chat, did y'all remember them saying that he was second in command? Because I sure did. One of the witnesses said he was second in command, but in fact, on paper and officially, Lieutenant Pargras is the acting chief of Uvalde PD during the unpredicted law enforcement response to the active shooter. So, in the absence of the police chief, Lieutenant Pargras, I don't know, Pargras is not how you say it. Do know that. He's the one that's next in line, which is kind of interesting. No, he wasn't on site. I do know that. I'm talking just in the tree, as I call it, or the ladder of who's who in what order. And I understand at the school at the time that Gonzalez may have been the highest ranking at the time. I get that. But at one point, they were saying that he was second in command underneath the chief. And no, he was not. He may have been the highest ranking there at the time, but he is not second command to the chief. At all relevant times, Lieutenant Pargras was acting, and if I'm saying it wrong, correct me in comments. I have no problem with that. I do not speak Spanish. Was acting in the scope of his employment under the color of law, yada, yada. Lieutenant Pargras as the chief and final policymaker for the UPD, acted or failed to act. He is being sued in both official and individual capacities. Xavier Martinez is an individual residing in Texas. He's a lieutenant in the UPD. Martinez is a lieutenant of the UPD, failed to act, the same thing. At all times while he was acting. So he was another one in the hallway. He's being sued individually. Eduardo Canales is an individual residing in Texas. He's a sergeant with the UPD. He too is in the line of succession here. He is being sued individually. Defendant Daniel Coronado individually is being sued and in his official capacity. And he's also being failed to act. Defendant Louis Landry is an individual residing in Texas. Okay, he was an officer with the UPD, same thing, being sued individually. Defendant Donald Page, individually being, he was a UPD officer. He's being sued individually. Defendant Justin Mendoza, UPD officer. Victor Escalon, individual. He lives in Weslaco. Now, I've been to Weslaco many times. Hurricanes and tornadoes. I was there when, Weslaco gets demolished with floods. Victor Escalon, director, was the South Texas Region Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety and was acting director of DPS on the scene during the attack on Robb Elementary. He should have been top dog. He's a director, should have acted or failed to act with deliberate indifference. He is being sued, official and individual capacities. Steve McGraw is a regional director of Department of Public Safety and was chief director of DPS during the attack. Same thing. He's being sued in the same manner. Joel Benacourt is also an individual residing in Texas. Texas Department of Public Safety failed to act in the same manner. Defendant is being sued individually. Defendant Juan Maldonado is individual also living in Texas, sergeant for the Texas Department of Public Safety. Same language as the other paragraphs above in his official and individual capacity. He's being sued individually, it says right there. Plaintiffs are ignorant of the true names and capacity of the defendants sued here within, those 1 through 100. Therefore, these individuals, such as fictitious names, some of the DOE's 100 were responsible for training, supervision, control, assignment, and disciplines of the sworn citizen personnel of the UCISD, the city of Uvalde, and well as a UCISD, PD, UPD, DPS, and other local, state, federal law enforcement agencies, including the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, who responded to Robb Elementary on May 24, 22. They will give notice when new people pop up. Okay, here's where it's going to get interesting. And this is where we start getting into the meat. I know we've kind of talked a lot about who's getting sued. Well, everybody. Everybody and their brother. Hold on. Given the exponential rise in the mass shootings in the United States and their gut-wrenching encroachment into school settings, school districts and law enforcement have been forced to reckon with the national scourge while having their efforts thwarted by calculus and unrelenting Second Amendment advocacy and opportunistic, profit-driven weapons manufacturers. We're not going to get political in this. Such reckoning, why is this? There we go. I have to fix it. Such reckoning has resulted in the aggression of standard of care protocols that provide school districts and law enforcement with premeditated and vetted courses of action that enable them to undertake swift, automatic, and highly organized response. Those utmost adherents can save lives within fractions of a second. Hello, out and about with Doyen. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. So here's where we're going to really start talking. I do have these highlighted for different reasons. Just ignore the highlighting. It helps me. Okay. Nevertheless, protocols and standards are only effective if and when their dictates and tenets are complied with. Despite the facts that such protocol and standard pertaining to mass lead shooting were well in place as of May of 24 or 22 in Uvalde School District. The protocols were there. The training they had supposedly gone to the training. They said everybody was trained. The protocols were there, as well as local, state, and federal enforcement. I know I hate it. I have to fix it. Were woefully in a branch of these well-established protocols when in fact their implementation was gut-wrenchingly triggered. Instead of swiftly implementing an organized and concerted response to an active shooter who had breached the otherwise secure school building at Robb Elementary, the conduct of the 376 law enforcement officers who were on hand for the exhaustively tortuous 77-minute of law enforcement indecision, dysfunction, and harm felt exceedingly short of their duty-bound standards. Now we're going to start talking about the training or the alert. As with the largest contingent of law enforcement on scene at Robb Elementary School on the 24th of May, the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, and the entirety of the Texas Law Enforcement Department subscribed, trained, and were therefore bound by protocol to provide the Active Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Program, or also known as ALERT, a program that was created in response to Columbine school shooting in '99 and considered the national standard in active shooter response training, provides Texas law enforcement with standardized training for a response to an active mass shooting. Try not to get in trouble. Okay. The alert protocol requires, it's not a suggestion. It is a requirement. And I was trying to highlight that in red. It's a requirement that responders, I put the all in there, must have tools and training immediately and without delay, make entry, neutralize an active shooter. Thus, with a subject fires a weapon at a school, he remains an active shooter until he is neutralized and is not to be treated as a barricaded subject. Okay, this is huge, y'all. Huge. Because he fired his weapon on the school campus even before he got in the door. He had fired the weapon on school campus. From that moment on until he was taken out and he was to be considered an active shooter, never was he to be considered a barricaded subject. That kind of pissed me off. Alert training lucidly distinguishes between a hostage and barricade versus an active shooter scenario. Repeatedly, under the alert protocol, law enforcement first priority is to immediately stem the killing of innocent civilians, and that every law enforcement officer is expected to be willing to risk his or her life without hesitation. Hence, law enforcement officers are expected to distract, isolate, and neutralize. We have heard this 100 times. Distract, isolate, and neutralize the threat, even in tactically complex situations. Such alert mandates that from the moment forward, every law enforcement officer is expected to be willing to risk his or her life without hesitation. Such overriding mandates exist to stem the ensuing damage by swiftly moving to neutralize the shooter. Time is of the essence, and as the longer the shooter is alive, the more carnage occurs. I got to take a breath. I understand the situation with Gonzalez. Okay, he was acquitted, but the only people who, and I'm not defending Gonzalez, so don't come after me, but the first 4 or 5 that went in there went straight in. They didn't hug the walls. They didn't crawl. They went straight in and headed right towards the shooter. Hello. Welcome in. Hello. Thanks for joining. Possibly, Jen. Yeah. But all of them in that hallway, all of them, even if the first 5 had to retreat because they were under fire and not equipped to handle it, or for whatever reason they backed up, the next wave should have gone in immediately, who did have more proper, they had people coming in with shields and vests and helmets and all of this stuff. They should have gone in, and they did not. Okay. I don't know if I want coffee or if I want Dr. Pepper, hot or cold. I'm running low. I may have to go get me more coffee. I got to wash my mug. This is all from today. In order to establish a coordinated effort to be effective and override the mandate of swift neutralization, the alert protocol requires the prompt establishment of the incident command structure, the ICS. Should have already been set up beforehand. Everybody in that UCISD PD would know who is what and when and where, if they practice, if they knew who each person, there's only 6 of them in the department. It's not hard to figure out who's incident command, but that person has to take charge. Here's something that I don't remember hearing in court. Once again, with my hearing, I don't hear everything. If it's coming across captioning and I look down to right, I miss what's on the captioning. So if y'all heard it, let me know. But I got a little angry here. The incident command will be established by the first law enforcement responder who arrives on the scene, as in charge with immediate providing dispatch with a brief LCAN or location, condition, action, and needs. Therefore, the responder assumes immediate command. Now, I've preached this time and time again. As a first responder, I show up on a car wreck or a shooting or whatever, and I'm the first one there. I'm it. It's all on my shoulders until somebody else who comes, and I relinquish that authority. Now, I would be stupid to not relinquish the authority to someone higher up, because I don't want all the responsibility. But if not, I take all that responsibility. Further, as soon as the law enforcement responders notice that there appears to be sufficient officers hunting for the shooter, that responder should find a secure location, take out their active shooter response card, assume the initial incident command, and begin completing tasks listed on the card. I was floored to find out that there was a card that listed everything you're supposed to do in an active shooter, and it was their responsibility to have it on their persons. Where the frick was that card? Where was it? Why did nobody have it? You have 300 plus people there, and not one of them had the card on them. It tells you do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Did they not get it in their goodie bag, their swag bag? Is that it? They didn't want to pay for it? That really, I want to, let me see. Give me a split second. Where can I find a copy of this card? No. Hold on. Let's see. Why is this not? Let me highlight this again. Well, let me copy. Okay. Let's see if I can find it this way. Oh, here it is. Number 1, alert. Alert. Training and materials. We'll have to go over that in a minute. Therefore, the incident commander disseminates virtual information, i.e. location, condition, action, and needs to the subsequently arriving law enforcement and emergency services who have arrived on scene. The alert protocol stresses that the earlier an incident commander structure is established, a more prompt and successful response will achieve. No kidding. ICS 101. Yeah. Come back whenever you can, boo. Appreciate it. Okay, so where were these freaking cards? At least if you're in a situation, you've never done it, you've gone through the training, you've never done it, this is your first time, and all of a sudden crap breaks loose, and you're not thinking clearly, pull out your cheat sheet. The alert training teaches that every law enforcement responder, even those recently hired, should carry the active shooter response card with them at all times. They should be prepared to assume command and start completing the task listed on the card within the first few minutes. I do want to go over that card. Therefore, the incident command should move off the premises where an overall commander will take charge and assume control over the unfolding chaos of the emergency. With respect to addressing close or locked entryways or exit, the alert protocol is clear and mandates that all responders should be creative and make use of improv tools to get inside the building however they can. And somebody was going off about this coating that they put on the glass to make the school glass bulletproof. Well, if you do that, then you can't break the glass from the outside to get in an emergency. Or if the hallway is on fire, the kids can't get out. So I'm not gonna accept that as a plausible response for protection, in my humble opinion. With respect to using the keys to gain entry, alert counsel that the quickest, most discreet, and safest method to entering a locked building is to locate a key. As long as it can be located immediately, and the word here is what? Immediately, not an hour and 17 minutes later. But if it cannot be located quickly, law enforcement or first responders should use other techniques to enter the area without delay. Alert suggests a sledgehammer, pry bar tools are reliable, practical, and affordable breaching tools. No kidding. You had an external window. See, here's the thing. Why didn't they have someone on the external windows and the ones in the hallway coordinating? They distract them in the hallway and they break in the door. I don't know. I know hindsight. I understand, but my brain just cannot stop from going there. Although all defendant law enforcement agencies subscribe to the alert protocols and standards, the defendant Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District additionally adopted its own standards and protocols set out in a registered entitled Annex 1 active shooter in April of 2020. Annexed. The Annex I was adopted upon direction from the state of Texas, mandating that every school officer in Texas must be trained on how to respond to an active shooter. Every single one. Why am I getting a copyright violation? June, can you go into back office? We just got hit with a monetization thing. I don't know. It's not a strike, but I'm just getting hit with it. That is strange. That is very strange. It's an older post. Okay. So the CISD Annex outlined the operational concepts and responsibilities and procedures required in order to coordinate the response to an active shooter by the CISD administration, teachers, district police officers, and local enforcement. With all that said, the alert protocols, the Annex program stressed The importance, you see it underlined, the importance of neutralization of the shooter as a number one priority. Number one priority. The priority of life scale dictates that the innocent civilians are prioritized over law enforcement and other responders. In other words, boo, you're going to lay your life down. Now we're going to start getting in a minute. We're going to step away from all these annex and stuff, and we're going to start hearing personal stories, and they're going to start dictating some things here. And y'all, it's going to get a little bit difficult. So I'm just warning y'all, if you need to step away, you can. That said, I'm sorry, my hair is just tickling my back and I got to get it off my back. It's driving me crazy. My apologies. Give me a second. There we go. Okay. The annex. Now I'm getting hot. I got to turn off my seat. The annex mandated that the CISD Police Administration and their teachers are to have a daily responsibility to mitigate and prevent an active OODR situation, including conducting inspections in the classrooms to make sure, are we listening? To make sure that the doors and windows can be secured and are secured. So what I don't understand is why not one, not two, but potentially three or four doors. I know of at least three, possibly a fourth door, were unlocked the day of the shooting. I know my hair's horrid. I don't care. Okay. So the windows can be secured. Doors to all classrooms remain locked during instruction, and that each staff member will know the procedures to follow in order to have any door or window repaired that will not lock. So it is the teacher's responsibility to notify the school that there's a problem with the door. Now, I'm not going to blame teachers, but at some point, teachers need to hold themselves accountable for what they did not do too. My father is a teacher, so I'm not quick, but in his classroom, because he worked industrial technologies, his door always had to be locked, especially when he wasn't in there. And if the door didn't lock and he couldn't fix it, it was his responsibility to notify the school that it needed to be repaired because it wasn't locking properly, and the school refused to repair it. Then it's off of his shoulders. If he reported the door was not functioning properly and the school didn't fix it, no longer on the teacher's shoulders. But if the teacher knew the door wasn't working properly and they didn't report it because they were enjoying not having to lock it, it's on you, boo. Plain and simple. In addition, Annex 1 circumscribe policies in order to diminish the risk of an active shooter occurrence. For example, Annex required each CISD campus to convene a team to identify, evaluate, and address potential threats to the school's security, including monitoring of all social media that suggests connection with Uvalde, in order to identify any possible threat made against the student staff within the school. Now, I don't know how that works. Can someone tell me, how does that work? And I hate that color. Why is it doing that color? That's not the color I want. I want yellow. We'll go yellow. How are they supposed to how are they supposed to monitor social media? All social media that suggests a connection to Uvalde in order. I guess if they see anything that says that connected through the school, that they're supposed to monitor that, but I don't know. That to me is a little vague. I'm struggling with that. Wow. I'm struggling. The perimeter fence is required in order to restrict access to Robb Elementary, as is staff emergency training, procurement of radios for staff to support the campus communication, none of which was well cared for or even done. The CISD annex designates the district police department chief, you see the word chief there, as the officer responsible for coordinating the efforts of all law enforcement and first responders who arrive on scene. He's top dog. It don't matter if you were the top of DPS when you arrived there. You are there under a memorandum of understanding, and that the person in charge, unless he relinquishes it over to you, is the chief of the PD for Uvalde School PD. He is the one, he's top dog. Now, that said, I didn't know much about this guy when I went into this because I was trying not to be too overly judgmental on this. And I sat there and after reading through all this, man, I'm seeing red. I understand why they put Gonzalez up on the stand. What I don't understand is why this chief is not getting charged with all of the same counts that Gonzalez was, in my humble opinion. You'll understand why when we keep reading. Okay. And that the district administrative office should be utilized as an incident command post and should contain the school's emergency system and include communications, staff and student locations, details of floor plans that are readily available for use in coordinating response. So the district administration office, which is not on campus, is to be the headquarters for incident command for whatever school is under threat. They should maintain and have communication devices and a list where all the staff and students, like their itineraries, and that's all in the computer. And also they have detailed floor plans of every single school and are readily available for response. They should also put master keys on that list. My pressure always builds at night, guys. The annex stressed that all incoming outside law enforcement and first responders should follow the direction of the district police chief and accept their assigned role. The headquarters at this situation was at the high school. But it says here that it should be and the district administration office should be utilized as incident command post. So they didn't follow their own rule. Here we go. Here's where we're going to get into a lot of statement of facts. This is where I got a little bit upset. Okay. May 24th, 22. Safety compliancy. Prior to the 24th of May 22 attack, the compliancy with safety protocols and physical conditions at Robb Elementary were more than deficient. They've already got it nailed. It's more than deficient. For example, 5-foot-tall exterior fence was negligible for the impeding and would-be intruder. Both defendant Robb Elementary and Principal Gutierrez and the CISD Chief Police Alejandro were well aware of the Achilles heel in the school's infrastructure, but failed to make affirmative steps to remedy its significant shortcoming and protecting against what be intruders. Freaking 5 foot. Our schools have like 10 feet. I mean, they're tall. He was going to get in, but it would have slowed him down. While by the way, there's going to be sound effects. While I'll look at all those comments later. While the school safety protocol mandate that both the school's external and internal doors were to be consistently locked. Failure. I'm turning it down. Man, that's loud. My apologies. More. I like that better. Hello. That in and of itself is bullcrap. There existed a culture of noncompliance by school personnel who perpetually and deliberately circumvented and the required locking of the doors by continually propping them open, i.e., and using magnets. The school's administration, including Principal Gutierrez and Chief Alejandro, all well as the CISD school board, were all well aware of the policy breaches, but rather than address them, they chose instead to permit their continuation. This to me is a big problem. Big problem. Because you sit here and you preach to your students you must comply with all safety protocols, but then you have teachers who are ignoring those safety protocols and who are choosing to put people at risk. I'm a little disheartened. I'll be honest. I am talking a lot. My mouth is drying out, so I'm gonna put a little something in there. Okay. Similarly, despite being appraised of the doors to many of its classrooms, including the ill-fated rooms 111 and 12, were unable to properly lock. The Principal Gutierrez and Chief Alejandro failed to ensure such locks were repaired. There is what I call the root of, you know how you have a tree, and then you have the roots, and you find out where the biggest root, the longest root goes to? That is my root. Had all those doors locked like they're supposed to, he wouldn't have been able to get inside. And then the teachers, if he had gotten inside, the teacher's doors should have been locked. The Principal Gutierrez and Chief Alejandro and CISD school board were additionally appraised at Robb Elementary emergency warning system was significantly compromised on the account of particularly poor internet coverage and mobile phone services. Such paltry services also negatively impacted the CISD's police radios, whose connectivity was consistently challenged. In this day and age, there is no reason whatsoever for a school to not have good internet. None. There's no excuse. You have to have enough internet to maintain your security. Yeah, Angela. Their radio should not be operating on the internet. Like my radio, which I have in the bedroom because I have it on at night for emergencies of what's going on. It doesn't work off of the internet. On account of Uvalde proximity to the Mexican border, there were frequent instances where Mexican human traffickers crossing the U.S. border while being pursued by the U.S. Border Patrol. The traffickers would purposefully crash their vehicles in order to permit the smuggling patrons to scatter. In response, the administration and the police at Robb Elementary would sound an alarm via its Raptor alert system and either designate a secure alert or lockdown. frequently which these bailout, secure, or lockdown alerts took place. There were 50 alarms between February and May. 50 in 3 months. 50. This led to the school staff to disregard the warnings and threat alarms as a matter of fact and little concern. Rather than creating a different alarm for different types of emergencies, the administration relied upon only one signal whose frequent use on account of 50 bailout lockdowns in 3 months significantly diminished the urgency of response. When coupled with the poor internet and cell phone reception, the school administration and police department were well aware that the school emergency response system for campus lockdowns were inadequate. Now, oh my gosh, y'all. I hope I don't cry. 18-year-old Uvalde resident Salvador Ramos significantly fit the profile of other school shooters. His home life and upbringing were riddled with trauma that led him down the path of alienation, withdrawal from which further met with bullying and ridicule. It is not a coincidence that Ramos initially targeted the fourth grade students and he himself was the subject of protracted bullying in his fourth grade year. Thereafter, Ramos withdrew from attendance in class, such as that by 2021 at the age of 17. He had only completed 9th grade. After withdrawing from school, he spiraled down a dark path with his friends taunting him as a school shooter. Alienated, Ramos found himself indulging in first-person shooter video games, including Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto. Ramos found the attention he was seeking in social media by depicting himself as a cold-hearted, violent, aggressive character who displayed dead animals and acted a rageful gun shooter wearing body armor. Relatively, Ramos hinted on social media that he intended to engage in a school shooting and that he welcomed the attention and notoriety. Although 17 and 21, Ramos attempted to infiltrate straw gun purchases and began a mass gun accessory, including body carrying armor. Simulations with his purchases, Ramos began to increase vocalizing his obsession with school shootings. Upon his 18th birthday, May 16th, Ramos immediately purchased the Daniel Defense DD M4V7, an AR-15 style rifle, not a machine gun, that he had shipped to his Outback gun store in Uvalde. One day later, Ramos purchased another rifle, a Smith & Wesson MP-15, as well as 1,740 rounds of ammunition, which again he picked up at Oasis Outback. I want to know why that company right there would ever allow a kid that age to be acquiring that much weapon, ammo, and the weapons in that succession of time. Usually when you purchase things, you have a waiting period unless you have a license to carry. And he did not. I don't think he did. A background check was conducted, and despite Ramos making multiple gun purchases within a short period of time, which were otherwise reported to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm, Ramos passed his background checks. Yeah, but he passed them too quick. So, that was on the 15th and 16th of May. On the 24th, the attacker arrived at the school. Robb Elementary, poised to celebrate the end of the year 22 school year with an award ceremony support students and parents. Believing that this would also be a day as classmates from Uvalde High School would reconvene at Robb Elementary as a traditional parting gesture before graduation, Ramos planned to attend and carry out his intended massacre. On that fateful morning, after he heated exchange with his grandmother over the mobile phone plan, Ramos shot his grandmother and set off in her truck towards Robb Elementary. En route to Robb Elementary on about 11:28 a.m., Ramos, who apparently did not know how to drive, lost control of the truck, landed in a canal ditch. As crash occurred in the vicinity of the Hillcrest Memorial Funeral Home, two employees walked over to be of assistance. Ascending from the crash, Ramos began shooting at the two Hillcrest employees who fled for their lives back to the funeral home. Gathering his arsenal, Ramos proceeded to Robb Elementary, which was adjacent to where he crashed his grandmother's truck. Ramos easily traversed the school 5-foot perimeter fence, which turned out to be a negligible deterrent. 5 foot, even this disabled mom could do that. Ramos was spotted by Coach Yannette Silva, who was outside with her third graders. Ramos proceeded to shoot in the direction of the coach, who took cover, immediately reporting the active shooter through her school radio approximately 11:29 a.m. Expecting to immediately hear an over the announcement that the campus was being placed in lockdown, Coach Silva shepherded her students from the playground into a lockdown position. The lockdown announcement that the Coach Silva had expected to immediately circulate failed to occur. Why? I understand that the principal has resigned, but what about charges brought against them? If you're going to charge Gonzalez, you need to be charging a lot of other people. Because I'm getting really angry at these people. Miss Esther V. also heard the rattle of Ramos' gunshot from her special education classroom, room 31 and 32. After hearing the gunshots, Miss Esther V., a full-time USCISD special education teacher with students ranging from 2nd to 4th grade, proceeded to the window and saw the students and the teachers scattering in all directions. Miss Esther V. promptly locked the classroom doors and shuttled her emotionally and physically disabled students into the closet within the classroom. Everyone was accounted for. There were approximately 13 students and teachers barricaded within the closet. Some of her special needs students understood what was happening and expressed their fear and confusion. Miss Esther V. texted her 9-year-old child's teacher to appraise her that the shooter and to determine if her child was safe and under supervision. Miss Esther V. received a text back from her child's teacher informing that she was not with the class as they were in the cafeteria having lunch. As a special needs teacher, Miss Esther V. was equipped with the school radio and heard Coach Silva announce the presence of Ramos, but did not hear the campus-wide announcement or warning on Raptor system. I'm going to get me coffee. Miss June, is there anything you would like to share? That's crazy. Why in the world you've got radios hooked up to crappy Wi-Fi and have officer radios on it? I don't understand that either. I'll have to go get it when it's done, but I have to have something warm on my throat. I'm doing a lot of reading and talking. I don't understand why that was like that at all. So now we're going to talk about the failed active shooter warning. Such communications failed, unfolded on account that the school Raptor application system failed to transmit because of the well-acknowledged and persistently bad Wi-Fi signal on campus. Although impeded from broadcasting the active shooter alert through Wi-Fi, Principal Gutierrez did not even attempt to communicate lockdown over the campus's intercom. All she has to do is, attention, lockdown, lockdown, attention, lockdown. Boom! Old school. How many of us had that in our lives? I remember being in high school, and we've only had one lockdown in my life in high school, and you could hear them banging the mic. Attention, lockdown. Hello. If the system didn't, why is it that we cannot go simple when we're in the middle of an emergency and the system doesn't work? I mean, here, for example, just it's stupid, but it works. How many of us remember credit card machines? You put the card down, you put the receipt, you slide over it like that. That was old school, right? If technology goes down, you take the receipt paper out of the machine, lay it on the credit card, rub it, you got the credit card information, you write the number on the back, you get all there's ways to do things that are non-digital. Why did this principal fail to get on, or the vice principal, anyone, to get on the intercom? Oh, coffee. Yes, I am angry. I got really angry reading this. I understand why they wanted to go after Gonzalez, okay? I'm not going to argue whether he should or should not have been gone after. But boo, there was so much catastrophic failure that there are other people you can go after and have more meat on the bone. My humble opinion. She did, however, she did call Chief Arredondo, Chief A, who commanded her to shut it down, Mandy, shut it down. She thereafter instructed the school's head custodian to ensure all doors were locked. I don't think the intercom is the biggest problem. Once they were there, they didn't do anything. Yes, well, Music Man, I'm not going to disagree with you, but the door should have been locked. There's no reason to have 3 to 4 external doors in that area not locked. Then the teachers not having their doors locked, whether they were broken or they purposefully did it. And then you have a system failure with the warning system to lock the campus down. And I'm going to say this before I forget. I think that when Gonzalez and the other men entered that hallway, it saved a lot of lives because it pinned him in. Because he was not going to stop at that classroom with just those 2 classrooms with all the ammunition he had with him. But I'm just saying, it's not, I'm not saying the big intercom is the biggest problem, but it's a big problem. Shut it down, Mandy, shut it down. She thereafter instructed the head custodian to ensure the doors were locked. What is he? You got 5 buildings. He's already inside, boo. Alyssa Avila ushered her students into room 109, where they were on account for yet another faulty lock. Alyssa ushered her students into room 109, where, on account of yet another faulty door lock, was required to forcibly slam the classroom door in order to engage its lock. She and her students then assembled the lockdown position away from windows and doors. Meanwhile, UPD dispatched an initial 911 report from the funeral home. Commander of the UPD SWAT team, Sergeant Canales, a Uvalde Police Acting Chief Pargras, set off to Robb Elementary. Upon arrival, said officers met UPD Officer Xavier Martinez and Landry, who were also on the scene. Canales saw Ramos shooting his AR. There were other Uvalde police officers present, as well as the Department of Public Safety Sergeant Juan Maldonado at 11:33. Uvalde police officers observed Ramos carrying a rifle outside the school West Hall entryway. The officer asked, this is where I am going code red. Heard it in court, but we're going to go code red. The officer asked his supervisor, Coronado, for permission to shoot the suspect. In waiting for a response, it was too late, as Ramos had already moved out from his sight as the officer turned into Ramos. Code red. 3, 2, 1. Why am I code red? Because under the alert system, he doesn't need to ask permission to take him out because he's on school property with a weapon. And he's already fired that weapon at the funeral home, people. He's already fired that weapon at kids on the playground. In this scenario, he shouldn't even ask. It's plunk, he's gone. Down he goes. Hence right here. Although otherwise required under the alert protocol, immediately encountering an attempt to neutralize Ramos, neither of these first responding Uvalde police officers undertook such action, nor did they set up an initial incident command in order to begin the coordination of the active shooter response. Thus, under the Uvalde PD, first responder failed to refuse to undertake the required protocol to immediately distract, isolate, and neutralize the shooter. Under the alert protocol, they were not required to wait an order to swiftly confront the active shooter. Nevertheless, Uvalde's police officers, first responders, chose to discard that imperative mandatory protocol. This guy, who had him with a rifle in sight, should have pulled the trigger immediately. Immediately. And no child would have been hurt. What about his inaction? I'm angry at this section right here. I had to step away. I heard about it in the trial, but reading about it and looking at it, and the more we go through, the more I go, what the heck? Why did he not take him out? Under protocol of the alert, he didn't need to ask. He was covered. He was protected. He would not go to jail for red room. He was protected. The kid had already unleashed his weapon twice. One between the school and the funeral home, firing upon the funeral home people when they tried to help him, and then one on the playground. So there was no reason for him not to pull the trigger immediately. Had he pulled that trigger immediately, none of this would have happened. I'd hate to be him. Soon after, Uvalde CISD Police Chief Arredondo arrived, having left his office at the Uvalde High School, and this really blew my mind. As a first responder, I have everything I need at my fingertips, except for my vest there. And here I got to get them back in the car. But I have everything I need. I have my weapons if I need to have weapons, which is for self protection. But if I'm a police officer, as a first responder, I have my AED machine. I have my med bag. I have my seat collars. I have my lights. I have my vest. I have my helmet. I have everything I need to respond. And I do not leave them anywhere. Oh my God. Listen to what the police chief failed to do. Despite knowing he was responding to an active shooter. An active shooter. He knows. What does he do? He failed to bring along his body armor or his rifle. What? Sorry. Even more curious, upon alighting from his squad car, disregarded his police radio. He left his police radio. No body armor, no weapon, no radio. Why are you even there? Such decision precluded his ability to perform his role of incident commander, who was required to set up, communicate, command center. Thus, at the onset, Chief Arredondo disregarded his prescribed duties under both the CISD and the annex and the alert protocols for responding to an active shooter at CISD. I'm floored. I'm floored. Those who've been in the military, let me ask you, would you leave your stuff at home if you're going to war? Hello? Meanwhile, Ramos walked along the west side of the west building and then entered the unlocked northwest door. Although Ramos entered the west door, the exterior doors on both the east, the south side of the building, and the west, that's 3, were also unlocked such that Ramos had unfettered access to the building's interior. 3 doors that he could have just walked in and he would have gotten in. Once inside the west building, Ramos walked down the hallway and stopped in front of rooms 111 and 12. Approximately 1:33 a.m., Ramos fired his AR-15 rifle towards the... I got to go here. Hold on. I have to put that up. Towards room 111, there entered the door to 111, which, as was the case in prior occasions in which the school administration had been duly apprised, was extremely difficult to lock and thus was unfortunately unlocked and unsecured. So apparently the teacher had, because a lot of times you put your repair request in writing, appraised them that the door was not functioning, and he just walked in. Once in room 111, he rapidly fired over 100 rounds, both inside the room and adjoining room to 112. After 2.5 minutes, many students and 2 teachers were murdered. Many had died instantly, while others died slowly. Ramos apparently had no prior experience with firearms, and it is most likely that the shooting on May 24, 22 was his first time firing the weapons. Terrified teachers and students throughout the West Wing had heard this extended burst of gunfire, as did several law enforcement responders as they entered the building through an unlocked south and west doors. Hearing the gunshot, Uvalde PD Sergeant Canales turned to Defendant Department of Public Safety Maldonado, who had arrived on scene moments before at 11:34 Can you hear me? Okay, you should be able to hear me now. Testing, 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 1, 2. You can hear me. Yes. Okay. Why can I not hear me? Oh, I got to hook me up. I forgot I have to hook my device up now. I don't know what's going on. I have a sound booster, and every once in a while it does something weird and it kicks me out. My apologies. Maybe I needed that emotional break. When I just realized I have no foundation on my forehead. That looks so weird, y'all. The color doesn't match. So anyway, June, thank you so much. Y'all, thank you for your patience. So anyway, so they endured horror alone in their minds and bodies while listening to crying to 111, having experienced bullets piercing through the walls, not knowing if they were going to be next. After 2.5 minutes shooting spree with this sporadic gunshots thereafter, Chief Arnado, or Chief, I'm just going with Chief A, approximately 11:36, along with Uvalde PG Sergeant Coronado, Officer Page, and Gonzalez entered the south side of the building. Again, Chief A is disregarding the first principle of rapidly moving to neutralize the shooter. Determined that it was best to leave his radio behind, despite the fact that under CISD Annex Active Shooter Protocol, Chief A was required, not an option. And here's where I can sit here and say, I understand Gonzalez now, because it was their policy, both under the alert and under their annex, that the person required to be incident command, boom, was the chief. He's there. He automatically becomes incident command. Now, there should have been a turnover, but things were pretty crazy, and I get that. So I can understand the mindset. Doesn't mean I disagree with how it happened. It is required to assume the position of incident command to ensure the coordination response. Nevertheless, upon information and belief, no such incident command had been enabled prior to Chief A's arrival and the entry to the south side of the building. Although Defendant Lieutenant Martinez and Sergeant Canales also prepared to breach the doors, the officers were refrained from doing so after shots were fired in their direction. Soon after, approximately 8 to 10 law enforcement, including Uvalde PD, Acting Chief Progress, and gathered in or around the vicinity of room 1 to 11 and 12. Active Chief Pargas imparted the command to Uvalde PD officers to stand down and not to confront Ramos. UPD Sergeant Coronado informed other officers that the suspect was contained and barricaded, which the officers understood to mean that they were confronting a non-active shooter situation, hence where the confusion began. Thank you very much, Chief. Such was a blatant misrepresentation at the moment. Before, Ramos had been actively firing his weapon. Defendant officers knew or had reason to know that they were confronting an active shooter situation, not a barricaded subject situation. Once again, under the alert, once though they start shooting that weapon, they're no longer considered barricade at any point until they're taken down. They're considered an active shooter under their own protocol. Sergeant Coronado knew this to be the case, but nevertheless erroneously designated the situation as non-active shooter scenario. When inside the building, the officers attempted to communicate on their radios, but were unsuccessful on the account of limited reception. Without the existence of an incident command nor an incident commander, i.e. Chief A was amongst the officers positioned near room 112 and 111, no one had yet to set up an incident command. This absence including Acting Chief Vargas, who, despite perceiving a vacuum in the overall incident command, refrained from assuming the role. So, you have the chief of UISD. UCISD. He's top dog. But if he's down, incapacitated, physically, mentally, whatever, the next person would be chief of UPD. He should have seen that, oh crap, we don't have incident command. Hey, chief, can I set up incident command? You got your hands full. Fool. He should have taken control. In or about 11:41 a.m., officers from PDS arrived, including Texas Department of Public Safety Fire Marshal Hernandez, Constable Johnny Field, and Constable Emmanuel Zamora, who were instructors at the Regional Policy Academy. Yeah, you may not like it, but I got to do it. I got to do it, y'all. Y'all, I got to do it. 3, 2, 1. What the ever-loving bleep? You're telling me that not only do we have the chief of the UCISD, you have the police chief of UPD, and you have the TDPS Fire Marshal Hernandez, Constable Johnny Field, and Constable Emmanuel Zamora, who were the instructors at the Regional Police Academy who taught the classes for the alert. And additionally, CISD PD JJ Suarez, who is also a UCISD board member, arrive and enter the building. How much worse can this get? A lot worse. Again, 77 minutes. Chief A ordered officers to stand down and question whether facing active shooter scenario. After Ramos fired upon the officers positioned in room 111 and 12, Chief A gave the order to those of his command nearby to stand down and not engage. See, I understand, like I said, I'm not saying that Gonzalez should not have been charged. I'm not going to go down that road. He's been exonerated. You're innocent until proven guilty. You're not guilty. But I'm sure he's going to pay dearly in this lawsuit. But the role that they had him playing looks minuscule to me when I look at this. Why is Chief A not being held more accountable? I do not know. What are your thoughts? I want to see your comments. June, if you want to start a poll, please do. Do you believe Chief Arredondo should be held more accountable after reading just what you've read thus far? Because it gets worse. Therefore, Chief Arredondo considered whether there were any students in room 110. Finding the room door unlocked, another unlocked door, Chief Arredondo discovered an empty classroom and somehow jumped to the conclusion that by not seeing any injured students or teachers, that the active shooter scenario had changed to that of a barricaded subject scenario, i.e. Ramos was isolated and alone in a classroom, and as such, the strategy was to rescue the children in adjacent rooms and wait for Ramos to then neutralize himself. To wait out Ramos and then neutralize him. What? This theory unfortunately proved to be false throughout the course of the 73 minutes, particularly when series of 911 calls were received from terrified students who were huddled in agony in room 111 and 12, confirming that the active shooter scenario was treacherously unfolding. Meanwhile, Robb Elementary disingenuously announces on Facebook that the shooter was under... Oh, this angered me. I had to get up and walk away. The school announced on Facebook that the school is under lockdown status due to a gunshot in the area, but nonetheless, the students and staff are safe in the building. The building is secure in lockdown status, and at this time, the Uvalde PD posts on Facebook that there exists a large police presence at Robb Elementary. We are asking the public to avoid the area. You lying sack of shit. Yeah, I said it. You lie. There was a problem. Huge problem. Why is it that they can get away with this? I do not know. I hope this lawsuit has them tied up like crazy. Because this right here angered me. Because you're lying to the families. That is a bold-faced lie. Chief Arredondo accepts active shooter scenario and is unaware of the law enforcement response to other parts of the building. Chief A used his cell phone to call Uvalde PD dispatch and inquire whether a teacher was with Ramos in room 111. Therefore, Chief A admitted that he believed that there was either students and a teacher inside the room with Ramos, and that there were strong likelihood of casualties as well. Chief A repeated the same understanding, such that he repeated his hunch, reputed it. I can't say that. His hunch that Ramos was barricaded subject. Hello, thanks for joining. Hello. Thank you for joining us. The Uvalde Police Sergeant Coronado exited the building to make a call to dispatch rather than to the non-existent incident command center whose required existence was ignored. Hold on. Uvalde Police Sergeant Coronado exited the building. Okay, rather commander center who required thoroughly ignored requesting ballistic shields, flashbang grenades, and a helicopter support. We know they had shields. We know they had flashbang grenades. I don't know if they had helicopter support, but Sergeant Coronado admitted that he was unsure as to whether the door to room 111 and 12 were even locked or were unlocked, and reaffirmed that Ramos was contained and barricaded in room 111. Sergeant Coronado remained outside the building for approximately 30 minutes while student and teachers were being evacuated through punched out windows on the west side of the building. While not located in the west wing of the building, teacher class representative Velasquez and her special needs and physical and emotional disabled students were escorted out of her classroom closet. Law enforcement were pursuing her to move quickly despite her student's special need conditions, which otherwise impeded such a rapid response. Ms. Velasquez lifted up her small student and explained to her other students that they needed to run and or move quickly. Ms. Velasquez clutched her student in her arms and ran across the campus to a safe haven at the funeral home. Ms. Velasquez immediately texted her husband, who, after being mistaken at first responder, had been helping to evacuate the students across campus. So her husband was not even a first responder, was on scene helping them evacuate, and he's not even a first responder. She also sought information as to her son, who was in lockdown in the school cafeteria. During the entirety of this time, Chief A remained inside the building and, according to Sergeant Coronado, was in charge of the response despite not having the capacity to receive dispatches and or communications. For example, both Chief A and Sergeant Coronado were unaware that the U.S. Border Patrol Tactical Team Unit, BORTAC, were assembling and operating at the opposite end of the building from where both Chief and Sergeant were located. Apparently, at 11:44, Ramos started shooting again, providing further proof that Ramos was an active shooter. No officer responded, including the police academy instructors, Constable Fields and Zamora, nor Officer Hernandez, Suarez, or Mendoza. Rather, the assembled officers saw fit to search for the negotiator and a bullhorn to negotiate with Ramos as if he was barricaded subject rather than the active shooter. Chief Alejandro, or not Alejandro, Chief A searches for the master key. Now, I struggle with this. There should have been a master key on his key ring. He should have a master key to every single school already. Despite being unaware that as to whether the door to room 111 or 12 was indeed locked, Chief A determinedly sought a master key when, as chief of the CISD police force, the procurement of such master key should have been accomplished in short order. Why did the principal not provide one? She has one. She's supposed to. Nevertheless, Chief A stressed that before any attempt to enter the classroom could occur, he needed a master key to reach and breaching tools. Despite waiting the arrival of what Chief A conceived to be the only means of entering the classroom and neutralizing the shooter, there was no incident command in place, such as Chief A could have been informed that those two necessary instruments had arrived on scene. Yeah, didn't know that they were already there. While Chief A was orchestrating his response from the south side of the West Wing, an entirely separate response was being undertaken on the north side of the building. On this north side, officers from Uvalde PD, including Active Chief Pargas, Lieutenant Martinez, and Sergeant Canales, were stationed awaiting some command response. Acting Chief Pargas acknowledged that he was never in command with Chief A, nor with other law enforcement officers on the north side of the building. It was Lieutenant Pargas' understanding that Chief A must have been the coordinating with the law enforcement responses, giving supervisory jurisdiction over the school. So everybody thought that Chief A had everything under control, but he didn't. According to Lieutenant Pargas and Uvalde PD, merely there to provide support. Okay, and that angers me, but yet under the law, they are on school property. That is not their jurisdiction. They do have a memorandum of understanding set up, but that memorandum of understanding can only happen should Chief A call for it. He has to invoke it. Thus, such Pargas did not assert Uvalde PD jurisdictional authority over Chief Alejandro CISD PD to set up a command center, nor did he seek to coordinate any of the other agencies that were responding. Rather, Pargas awaited the arrival of the Department of Public Safety, BORTAC, who he assumed would provide better equipment. Y'all. Are y'all okay? DPS Rangers, however, when DPS Texas Rangers did arrive, law enforcement at the perimeter, who were unaware of what was happening inside the building, instructed them merely to assist with the perimeter. So there was somebody out there thinking that they had more information than they really did, and they decided to have the DPS be perimeter patrol. Such instructions were reaffirmed by DPS Commanding Officer Captain Joe Benacourt, who directed the DPS team to remain on the perimeter and not to enter building. Benacourt ordered DPS teams to stand by and await arrival for more highly skilled group who were on their way. Captain Benacourt also ordered the DPS team that was gearing up and poised to breach the classroom to stand by. So you had a group of people ready to go in and breach, but they were told to stand by, which sucks. Captain Betancourt was ordered result in the large contingent of DPS personnel on site to disregard their training and refrain from taking immediate and swift action to neutralize the shooter. They were ready to go in. They were willing to go in. They were like, let us go. And he's like, nope. And jurisdictionally, they could have taken control because DPS is over them school. I mean, when you look at your incident command, you've got Uvalde, then the school district, then you have the city, then you have the sheriff, then you have DPS, you have your troopers, you have your rangers, and it goes like that. So as these higher up, bigger entities show up, they have the ability, their captains, their commanders, their chiefs had the ability to take incident command if they wanted to, and they did not. Such command resulted in the majority of the 91 strong DPS units to wait more than 70 minutes into 77-minute long shooting to take any substantive reaction. Upon information and belief, Captain Betancourt was carrying out both DPS Regional Director Victor Escalon and DPS Overall Director Steve McGraw's directives as to how DPS should engage while responding to an active shooter at Robb Elementary, despite the state-mandated required protocol that they were required to undertake. However, DPS Special Agent Luke Williams ignored such instructions and proceeded over the north side of the building and began clearing students and teachers among the north hallway. Hallelujah! We have a hero. We have one who decided to ignore the order and go save lives. When interfaced with officers' situation outside room 111 and 12, DPS Agent William was informed that they were waiting for instruction of whoever was in charge to figure things out. I would be saying, that'd be me. I'm going in. Come on, let's go. After discerning law enforcement response was seemingly unfolding into a hazardous manner without a centralized command, DPS Agent Williams was required to follow the alert protocol by asserting his authority as DPS Texas Ranger and to take the reins and setting up a command center and tightening up the response. However, DPS William, as well as 91 other DPS law enforcement personnel on the scene, failed to take despite their mandated jurisdictional authority to do so. I took back my applause, dude. Took it back. Took it back. Law enforcement blocks plaintiff parents' entry. Meanwhile, at the perimeter of the school campus, many parents had assembled to seek to retrieve their children. They were vehemently, I can't say that very well, denied entry into the campus by law enforcement despite having received no affirmative communication apprising them of the state of law enforcement response to neutralize an active shooter. Apparently, 20 or so minutes after Ramos had entered the building, a group of terrified parents pled with law enforcement to permit their entry, which was forcibly rebuffed. Students' parents were forcibly held back, pinned to the ground, pepper sprayed, and tasered. One parent, however, was able to break through the grips of the law enforcement who prevented her entry. She ran into the building and reached her two kids. In or about the same time frame, the word got out that there was an ensuing active shooter at Robb Elementary. Parents class representative Andrea Villa, Miss Villa, received a call from her sister informing her that such nightmare was unfolding. Ms. Villa's son and granddaughter were in attendance at that school that day. AV was in the 4th grade and GE was a 3rd grade. At first, Ms. V did not believe her sister was a sister and that there was nothing posted on the school's Facebook page. In the past, and the school was sure to communicate. Panicking, Miss Madrid drove in the direction of the school, and after passing the school street, drove towards the back of the school near the funeral home. At the funeral home, several parents and law enforcement were assembled. Miss V was determined to find her son, but was thwarted by law enforcement. A woman was gathering the names of students from the parents and promised to determine where they were safe. Miss V provided the children's name. Other parents were banging on doors and windows looking for answers to their children's safety. When a woman with the list returned and wasn't able to confirm AV's presence, Miss V panicked. Miss V forcibly screamed and cried and panicked that AV had been murdered. In pressing in to determine if her son was alive, Miss V was able to receive word that AV was alive inside the school. After hearing that the school was going to load the children into the school buses and bring them to the Civic Center, Miss V left for the Civic Center to see for her own eyes that AV was safe and sound. After lining up at the Civic Center, Miss V was finally reunited with her son AV, and AV's teacher told Miss V how proud she was of AV's bravery and how strong he was during the experience. Homeland Security. BORTAC prepared to breach. As events unfolded inside the building, unbeknownst to Lieutenant Pagras, Homeland Security BORTAC unit under the command of Paul Guerrero had been assembling and were themselves awaiting in order to breach the classroom. Commander Guerrero was well informed that the students were trapped in the classroom with Ramos. Nevertheless, Commander Guerrero informed his officer that it was going to take time to breach the door. Between the time of 11:30 a.m. and 11:37 a.m. and 12:50 p.m., surveillance footage depicted a steady stream of law enforcement agencies moving in and out of the north hallway, perpendicularly positioning and preparing themselves for an eventual breach effort. Despite the fact that Chief A and the Uvalde PD acting chief Pagras were awaiting the arrival of the ballistic shield in order to effectuate the breach in room 11, surveillance video taken between the hours of 11:52 a.m. and 11:21 p.m. depicted the arrival of 4 different ballistic shields in the north end of the building. Of course, they don't have radios to communicate with each other, so they don't know that they're there. A rifle-rated shield arrived around 12:20 p.m. and some 30 minutes before the classrooms were finally breached. However, Chief A, who was located at the south end of the building and was operating without assistance of centralized command center, was unaware that the shields, particularly the rifle-grade shield, had arrived. Similarly, the Chief A was also unaware that BORTAC had assumed operational control approximately 12:20. So they took control. Congratulations. Then it took them forever. On or about 12:15 p.m., the student from inside the building called to report that a teacher, Miss Morales, was alive but had been shot. Miss Morales was the wife of Uvalde PD officer Ruben Ruiz, who received a call from his wife at 11:48 a.m. confirming that she had been shot. This is a 911 call that had followed an earlier call at 12:03, wherein the student called informing 911 dispatch that there was 8 or 9 students still alive in a room. In or about the same time, defendant officers, including the acting chief Pagras, received a radio dispatch that one of the classroom was full of victims. Acting Chief Pagras responded, Okay, thanks. After informing Border Patrol as to the victims, stepped out of the school building for 30 minutes. I want to go code red on that. Despite that such information reinforced the fact that the officers were facing an active shooter scenario, defendant officers persisted in response as if it was a barricaded subject scenario. Such response continued despite the officers hearing that Ramos began firing his weapon in the room at room 111 at 12:21, some 37 minutes after the last shooting had occurred. Just before 12:30, on the north side of the hall, a group of officers established a position closer to closer to the rooms 111 and 112, as well as staged medical triage equipment on the east side of the hall. This took place under tactical command of BORTAC. BORTAC was acting commander Paul Guerrero, arriving on the north side with breaching tools. And again, without coordinating communication, Chief A was unaware that Bortak was positioned to breach room 111 and 112. In taking control of the situation, Commander Guerrero determined that the use of the Halligan breach tool would not work fast enough, such that his officers would face a heightened risk of gunfire. Similarly, in acquiring and testing a master key on the adjacent classroom door, Guerrero determined that the master key that he had received from the school did not work, although there was a reasonable doubt that whether the room door 11 was even locked. Guerrero obtained a second master key, which he determined had worked. Nevertheless, despite having all the elements in place to breach the classroom and taking charge of the tactical command inside the building, Guerrero waited to give the order for his team to move forward. Finally, after assembling a stack of Bortak officers, as well as charging one officer with holding the rifle-rated ballistic shield, Guerrero commanded the students through this, y'all. This pissed me off. I sobbed. You freaking caused this kid to get killed. Listen to what happened. Guerrero commanded the students through the door, yell if you need help. After Ramos shot the responding student, the door opened in room 11 where Ramos fired his rifle at the stack. You never ask a victim in a room who is, if you've got a guy, it's like in a bank, and you've got this guys, 3 or 4 people standing with rifles, and they've shot a bunch of people. You're laying next to a dead person, and you've covered in their blood, and you're looking dead yourself, and you hear a cop outside say, yell if you need help. Do you think I'm going to yell? I'm going to lay there and play dead as long as I can, because why? The moment I go, bam, I'm gone. I don't know about you, but this right here infuriated me. I cried. I laid in bed last night and could not get that out of my head. Ramos shot the kid who responded to Guerrero. Why would you do that? The stack killed Ramos with a barrage of bullets, although such undertaking unfolded in a matter of seconds and was otherwise the required response under the standard protocol responding to an active shooter. Law enforcement took 77 minutes to accomplish what they were duly bound to exponentially perform. Each second of those 73 minutes exponentially compounded the plaintiff and the class members' harm to a degree that it was inevitably echoed into the hearts and souls of the survivors, their families, and the Uvalde community as a whole. Try not to cry. This is allergies. After receiving a dispatch at approximately 11:40 a.m., support staff class representative Sylvia Yu, upon arriving at the funeral home with her school bus. Now, this is where the school bus driver comes in. And I got to tell you, I would be suing the school if I was her. Found a chaotic and crazed scenario with parents screaming, law enforcement scurrying to and fro and awaiting ambulances, and impossibility to maneuver her large bus through the chaos. Prior to arriving at the funeral home, Miss Sylvia Yu was not informed as to what happening at Robb. Dispatch merely informed her to pick up children at Robb and take them to Uvalde High School. They sent her into an active shooting scenario without any warning. It was only upon her arrival at the funeral home did she learn what had tragically unfolded. Panicked and unable to drive forward or backwards, Miss Sylvia Yu locked her bus and awaited instruction from law enforcement. Sometime around 12:50, Miss Sylvia Yu heard a barrage of gunshots. Minutes after, I'm live. Are you okay? Sorry, my daughter's up in the panhandle of Texas where there's a lot of snow still, and she's just checking in. So, upon arrival, minutes later, Barack asked, okay, 12:50 p.m., heard the barrage of gunshots. Minutes later, BORTEC officers with bloodied children in their arms came storming onto her bus with 6 profusely bleeding children. The officers set the children in the back of the school bus. Realizing, I'm like, oh my God, you're supposed to have some foundation of first responder, first aid. Yeah, you suck. They sucked, royally sucked. Realizing that 3 of the 6 children were in more critical state, BORTEC retrieved 3 and carried them out to an ambulance. 3 remaining children were also profusely bleeding, with the BORTEC officer commanding Miss Sylvia Yu to quickly drive to a hospital. That is not her job. As the bus was blocked from going forward, law enforcement had to move vehicles and clear traumatized, panicking parents to allow the bus to depart. Police car escorted both the ambulance and Miss Sylvia Yu bus to the hospital. Upon driving out, Miss Sylvia Yu witnessed the bodies of the deceased children being lined up on the sidewalk, as well as EMS applying CPR in an attempt to save the life of one of the teachers. After finally arriving to the hospital and delivering the traumatized and bleeding children, Miss Sylvia drove back to the direction of Robb Elementary with the BORTEC officer. She was then ordered to return to Robb Elementary to pick up children and deliver them to the Uvalde Civic Center. However, good thinking, this is a good bus driver. She should get Bus Driver of the Year for the state. However, as her bus was covered in blood, both on the seats and throughout the entirety of the floors, Miss Sylvia drove back to the bus garage to pick up another bus. Upon arriving back to Robb Elementary, Miss Sylvia witnessed a chaotic mass of teachers with their traumatized and screaming children and parents being held back by law enforcement. As the children were being loaded into the bus, Miss Sylvia saw many of the children that she regularly transported to the school. The children were screaming and crying, and all the way to the Civic Center. Upon arriving at the Civic Center, Miss Sylvia witnessed parents clamoring to locate their children, but were kept back from reuniting with them by law enforcement until after the children entered the building. Parents were then requested to show proof that they were indeed the children's rightful parent. That is normal. After dropping off children at the Civic Center, Miss Sylvia was required to return to Robb to pick up the remaining children. She did so after making the last run to the Civic Center. Miss Sylvia returned the bus to the garage, finally allowing herself to break down and express the horror of what she just experienced. Although Miss Sylvia Yu had been a bus driver for this defendant school district several years, the CISD had never provided training on proper measurements to take when executing school evacuation, let alone evacuation on account of an active shooter situation, which appalls me. The narrative facts above glaringly expose law enforcement complete and utter disregard for the standards of protocol required in responding to an active shooter scenario. In total, 376 law enforcement were on hand, and not one of them complied with the absolute mandatory requirement that they are to immediately distract, isolate, or neutralize the active shooter. Reports compiled post-attack indicated that despite the state's mandated requirement that all law enforcement in the state of Texas undergo active shooter training, this floored me. Only 50% of the UPD, only 50% of Uvalde Police Department officers had responded on May 24th of 22 ever received that training. They never received that training. 50%. In addition, defendant officers failed to establish incident command. Each law enforcement agency who arrived ignored all too apparent reality that they were confronting an active shooter scenario and that there was no coordinated centralized command in the place to orchestrate the response, let alone any centralized communication centered informing and coordinating the various agencies of the overhaul tactic plan. In addition, the response was so completely ineffectual that the Ramos was neutralized and students were liberated from the classroom. The students, including those wounded, were evacuated to hospitals on regular school buses rather than required ambulance. It is required ambulances. Now, if you don't have enough ambulance, fire trucks, but a school bus is not appropriate. The school bus were without an EMT, so they had nobody there to perform first aid or to monitor, nor other adults aboard. So when the bus arrived at the hospital, children who had been wounded had to limp off the buses with no assistance. As law enforcement officers with preliminary state law enforcement agencies, the 90-plus SPD Texas Rangers on scene were imbued with the judicial authority over the situation, yet permitted the organizational void to persist over an inconsiderable 77-minute delay. Although there was a vague assumption that Chief of the CISD Police, Chief A, had assumed command, the fact that Chief A had positioned himself within the south side of the building and was therefore out of contact with the response efforts assembling on the north side, as well as those in the perimeter, such assumption was clearly unreasonable. This is particularly so given that the responding agencies had all undergone both the state-mandated alert active shooter training as well as their own individual agency training, and thus were well aware of the protocols and the command chain and were required. It was glaringly clear to all law enforcement agencies that such protocol was not in place in the functioning at Robb Elementary School throughout the fateful 77 minutes of protracted confusion under unimaginable physical and emotional suffering endured by the student, teachers, and parents. Similarly, the primary required response was to stop the killing. The entirety of the law enforcement never attempted to breach the classrooms nor take affirmative step to determine whether the rooms were even breachable or were easily breachable, whether the classroom doors were indeed unlocked. Chief A protracted search for a master key despite his position as police chief of the entirety of CISD campus consumed his attention, therefore delaying the otherwise required rapid neutralization of the shooter. Neither Chief A or any law enforcement asked the school principal, Mandy Gutierrez, or the head custodian for the master key despite such being in their possession. What? This blew my mind. Blew my ever-loving mind. Nobody asked Miss Gutierrez or the head custodial for the key. I'm going to go to the custodial people. Give me a custodian. They got keys. Such oversight encapsulated the entry of the law enforcement response that there was a vacuum of communication, both literally as radios and cell services within the building were purportedly non-existent to figuratively as to the existence of no incident command to serve as a conduit for the communication between various responding parties and locations in campus. And an attempt to obfuscate or camouflage the complete and utter disarray of law enforcement response, the initial public statement that the press briefing provided by DPS initially painted an inaccurate and exaggeratedly positive picture of the law enforcement response. DPS Regional Director Victor S. Gallon briefing provided information that Texas Governor Greg Abbott relied upon in his press conference the day after the massacre, Governor Abbott repeated a false narrative that entire incident only lasted as little as 40 minutes, and praise was due to the officers who rapidly devised a plan, stacked up, and neutralized Ramos. Thus, the governor presented a false narrative that the law enforcement conducted seamless mission, keeping Ramos pinned down while the children were being carefully evacuated. Ah! Now, I'm not going to get mad at the governor because he's got to rely on the information coming to him. On account of the preposterous length of time that it took defendants, law enforcement to finally neutralize Ramos to liberate the students, the amount and the degree of trauma, distress, and life-shattering anxiety plaintiff and the class members incurred had exponentially increased. With each moment that the defendant refused to affirmatively act, defendants conducted significantly prolonged the time that the plaintiffs were required to assume lockdown conditions on account thereof, resulting in emotional, physical scarring incurred by plaintiffs had been significantly and exponentially increased. For example, all right, this is a student. Where's my warning? I got to find my warning. There we go. Student class representative JP, after watching his beloved teacher, Miss Avila, endure close to 70 minutes of agony responding to a gunshot to her abdomen. His friend attending to her bloodied and severed nose had refused to either leave his house or his parents' side since the shooting incident. JP obsessively draws the windows blinds to his home and has repeatedly locks the doors and sleeps in his parents' room. Although the expression vary, such emotional and physical manifestations have rampantly expressed themselves through the daily lives of each plaintiff and class member, significantly plaguing the obsessing them, as well as the entirety of the Uvalde community. And then this is going into the actual pursuant of the federal blah, blah. Plaintiffs bring this action, class action, belief of themselves and all other similar stages. One, students, teachers, so that's all of them. Appropriate because the class sought to certify that more than one significantly numerous to make joiner impartial is therefore impractical to join each class member named plaintiff. While the exact number of class members is not yet known, there are significant number of similarly situated students, teachers, and school support staff, parents, such as that utilization of a class action is the most economically feasible means of litigating the merits of this action. So this here, they're just sitting here explaining why it's a class action. And it's a lot of legal stuff. Basically, they're saying that it is better for all involved, including the defendants and those who are suing, to do this as one big lawsuit. It's better for money, it's better for emotion, it's better for everything. Whether individual students are firmly acting in contract division to the state and district standards. I mean, we've already heard all this. All right, I want to get down to the damages. And this is all legal stuff. It's pretty much repetitive to a point. Claims that plaintiff superiors separate adjudication by individual class members may yield conflicting results, judgments, and obligations. So they're saying basically we do this all together. It's consistent. We do it individually. Some may win, some may lose. It's just better to do it all together. Also, in accordance to federal law, questions about the facts of common members of the class predominate over questions affecting only individual members. So, but plaintiff incorporate. Okay, so this is going to go through. Remember at the beginning we had all the people listed. We're doing it again. Okay, so now they're sitting here and say they're going to suing Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District. Substantial easy breachment, perimeter fencing. 2, complete lack of enforcement over mandated requirements of both exterior and interior doors are to be locked at all times. An exit in operable state of repair and interference of campus's emergency warning system on account of poor internet and cell phone services, and the failure to amend the school report lockdown alert system in order to account for the inordinate frequency of false alerts broadcasting on the account of the school proximity to the Mexican border. Upon information, a brief CISD board was apprised of the above security infirmities and infractions according to Robb Elementary, but failed to take any affirmative action to remedy the school's in compliance with its own and state mandated safety protocols for protecting against and responding to an active shooter on campus. On account of it is custom and practice of permitting non-compliance with the required rules, regulation, protocols enacted to ensure the safety of the plaintiff class members in the event of an active shooter scenario. Defendant CISD, throughout the deliberate indifference of its final policymaker, CISD Chief of Police Chief A and Chief Administrator Principal Gutierrez, violated the plaintiff's 14th Amendment rights to bodily and emotional integrity, as well as parental rights to make decisions regarding their children's care, custody, and control. And they say this for every section. The city of Uvalde, liability on account of law enforcement's final policymaker. We're going into 2.5 hours, so we're going to skim through this because this is basically condensing what we just read. I'm talking about Pagras was acting Uvalde police chief who was on the scene, who was charged with complying with the Uvalde and state protocols for responding for the unfolding active shooter robbery situation, and that he undertook his supervisory decision-making authority. He should have made the decision to step in. He did not. Lastly, municipalities may be liable failure to supervise or train, where number 1, supervisors either failed to supervise or train the subordinate official. The causal link exists between the failure to train and or supervise and the violation of the plaintiff's rights. The failure to train and supervise amounts to deliberate indifference. Here, on the account that both the alert and the annex protocols for responding to active shooter mandates immediate action and neutralization of the shooter, even at the risk of the respondent's life, UCISD, PD, and UPD officers magnificently failed. That's a way to put it. Magnificently failed to follow this non-negotiable perceptive protocol. Such is understandable given the report indicated that the district and the city of Uvalde failed in fact provide training to half of its representative police force, despite again the state mandatory requirements. Allegedly, although the alert and the annex protocols unconditionally required the responding officers to immediately establish command center and to assist with communicating, coordinating rapidly arriving emergency services such as mandated response, was also patently disregarded by the UCISD PD and the UPD officers, including the most glaringly Chief A and Acting Chief Pargas, thus giving the USCID PD and UPD complete and utter failure to comply with their mandated requirements for responding to an active shooter. The inadequacy of the training was more than obvious and apparent. Although thankfully there had not been any prior active shooting incidents within the school district, the UCISD PD and the UPD utterly reprehensible response fully satisfied to showing of deliberate indifference so that this single incident fully supports a plaintiff's claim. The second course of action is violation of due process of rights of the 14th Amendment. Provides that every person who, under color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state subject, cause to be subjected to any person deprivation of any federally protected rights. It's a lot of legal stuff. I'm going to scroll down to there. Basically, the 14th Amendment protects against the government's interference of individual body integrity and protects the fundamental rights of parents to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their children. Meaning, they were pepper spraying, they were tasing, they were physically restraining, and the parents were demanding their children, and they were not giving them their children. Then this is a list of all of the defendants, well, a chunk of them. They started breaking this down. The above statement, in fact, exhaustively makes plain each of the above named defendants acted in a manner that was deliberately indifferent to the plaintiff's safety and well-being. The same thing. So let's get down to, we're almost to the end. It's just reiterating who's getting sued for what. I have got to go in a minute, so I'm zooming through. But all of these are talking about where the students within the same room had been murdered and injured in need of prompt medical assistance, suing them for that, the supervision, all of it. Special relationship, a violation of submissive due process additionally triggered where a state actor affirmatively acts or restrain an individual freedom to act on their own behalf. Restrained on individual personal liberties such as that they are at state custody or controlled, otherwise it evokes the special relationships of an individual unable to care for themselves. Hereby, by effectuating a perimeter that resulted in barricading plaintiffs, students, teachers, and support staff inside their particular classroom, officers and other spaces within Robb Elementary campus, the above named law enforcement defendants had an affirmative duty to provide plaintiff safety and protection on account of the established special relationship, which plaintiff, by effective cutting off private avenues of life-saving rescue and failing to come to plaintiff students. So this is another word saying, you guys, you stopped people who are willing to go in and save them. Okay, this is what they're seeking. You ready for this? All right, this is what they're seeking. Let me get back to comments. Are y'all okay? We've been here. Hi, Jackie. How are you? Jackie Ballard on Facebook. Hello. Good to see you. The named plaintiffs and class members they're seeking represent pray that the court will, 1, issue an order clarifying the action of the class action pursuant to Rule 23A and the B, 2 of the federal rule of the civil procedure in the manner describing above here within the named plaintiffs and the class representatives. B, issue class-wide judgment declaring the defendants of the Uvalde CISD and the city of Uvalde Police. There's a lot of typos on this thing. Practice and customs of failing to undertake the comply within the state mandated district required protocols and the standards for protecting against responding to an active shooter violation. Plaintiffs, class members, 14th Amendment rights, United States Constitution. Issue an order for the following injunctive relief. Enjoining the CISD and the city of Uvalde from continuing this policy and customs of noncompliance with the district and state mandated protocol standards for protecting against an active shooter scenario. 2, required the CISD city of Uvalde to institute and implement an improved policy, program, training, infrastructure with which respect to the proactive educating, preventing, discovering, and responding to young adults who display a propensity to engage in mass shootings. I have a problem with that because they don't always see it because they're not around these kids. Require the CISD, in my humble opinion. There are some things that they can have and watch for on some websites, but require CISD, City of Uvalde, to institute and implement appropriate measures to ensure compliance with city, state, federal directives pertaining to the response to active shooter scenarios, as well as other emergencies at schools and or institutions involving children and or youth. Requiring the school principal and other supervised staff at all CISD campuses to undertake mandatory training to preventing and responding to active shooter scenarios, as well as provide training to all teaching and support staff in how to detect, respond to a student who displays a potential for engaging in mass shooting. Award the named plaintiffs and class members damages in the amount of $27 billion. There it is. $27 billion. What, baby? You want back up here? Come here. $27 billion of plaintiff actions. A plaintiff and class members against the defendant Mandy Gutierrez, and they list all of them. To be determined at trial. They are wanting the liberties based on reprehensible actions that are inactions undertaking in the individual capacities, punitive damages in an amount which is fair. That's not the punitive. 27 billion is not the punitive. Then they're wanting the punitive damages to be determined, reasonably designated to punish and deter said reprehensible conduct to be determined at trial. So all of these listed above individually can be fined $1 million each. I hope some of if you're ever in the police or any legal field or anything that you can be sued, man, you better be bonded and you better have a good one. Award all plaintiffs, including the members of the class, reasonable attorney fees pursuant. So they want all the attorney fees to be repaid by the above. Okay, come here. Award all plaintiffs, including members of the class, reasonable attorney fees pursuant. All plaintiffs, including members of the class, costs of suit pursuant, not only the attorney fees, but the other fees that are involved, filings, paperwork, all the other costs. Award such other further relief as his court may deem appropriate and equitable, including injunctive and declaratory relief as may be required in the interest of justice. Respectfully submitted. We're done. Y'all. My eyes are going cross. I kid you not, my eyes are going cross. Was there anything in that stuck out to you that made you go, whoa? Besides my hair. Couldn't wash it because we had no hot water. I can't do cold water on my head. Our hot water is, the water, when you put the water on hot, it is now running. I don't know if it's hot yet. I'll have to check it out. So, how are y'all doing? Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate it so very much. So, I took a lot of notes on this. I took 25 pages of notes. I did. So anyway, yeah, I took a lot of notes. A lot of notes. I need to save them. So in this, I did become very angry. I did. I came increasingly angry when I read this. I was very disheartened at the fact that they threw these kids on a school. I understand you're utilizing everything you have, but understand a school bus is not appropriate. There are fire trucks, there are police cars. I mean, send an agent with them who knows the fundamentals of CPR or whatever in case one of the kids crashed. It was just a horrible event. And after reading this lawsuit and reading the timeline, I have a better, I think, by the way, I'm wearing my great grandmother's glasses from like early 1900s. Look at them. Because my glasses are not arrived yet. And I needed something, and it helped with the reading. June, Angela, type if you can, if you want to. What one thing happened that you were not prepared for, or you did not know, if there was anything? For me, there were several things that I did not know. Number one, why would a police chief, I heard he left his radio and stuff. I mean, that kind of came out in court. But the more I think about it, I just think that's like sending a soldier going into war without his weapon and his stuff. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can do that to a bus driver. I mean, there was a lot of things that just kind of blew me out of the water. Of course, you could see as I was reading it. The fact that this poor student was sitting there watching his teacher die and his friend with her nose blown off her face. The overall, I'll put it this way. I got really mad about the chief, and I thought, well, a lot of times people who are chiefs or presidents of whatever, managers of whatever, take the blame for those who are below them because ultimately they're responsible. For me, this guy was so he was far worse than anything Gonzalez did, in my humble opinion. I hope they bring him to trial because to me, he's the one that really dropped the ball. And asking to yell, and then the child replied and got shot. That tore my heart out. Thank you. Rocio Flores, did I say it right? That really stabbed me in the heart. I see it, June. Let me go to Livecom and see what she placed in Livecom. Okay, do you want me to talk about this tonight? Because I can just put yes or no in chat, please. It is appalling that you would ask a student to holler out for help, knowing that shooter's going to kill him. And he did. The only reason that child is dead is because the officer said, if you're in there, yell if you need help. He yelled and he got killed. That is on that officer. That one death is on that officer. That is on that officer. Okay, I'm going to share this. June just sent it to me. Let me get it up here. Let me get it in the right frame here. Hold on. Okay, veteran reacts to the unaliving of a veteran's nurse, Alexis Pretty, by federal agent. The killing of Veterans Affairs nurse Alexi Pruitt in Minneapolis by U.S. Border Patrol personnel has drawn strong response from veterans, with many denouncing the saying that and others calling for political audit of personnel working in VA. In his message, Colin confirmed that Pretty was a nurse in the Minneapolis VA Medical Center and sent to the VA condolences. He also weighed in on, however, on the I haven't pre-read this. Facing Minneapolis as a result of the administration. Nobody wants to see chaos and death in American cities. Such tragedies are unfortunately happening in Minnesota because of the state and local offices refusing to cooperate with federal government to enforce the laws and deporting dangerous illegal criminals, wrote Collins. That is true. This is not about politics per se. But when you interfere with the police or law enforcement who are arresting somebody who committed crimes, whether they're legal or illegal, you risk getting hurt. That's on you, boo. Such statements sparked outrage from followers and calls for progressive advocacy groups. This happened because some fake wannabe soldier marched down the street looking to intimidate and rough up people. If you can't stand up for your employees who serve us veterans, resign. Paul Rycroft, founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, Independent Veterans of America, noted that Collins took more than a day to issue a statement about the VA employee's death, and when it arrived, it was disgraceful. Collins always and clearly cares more about the loyalty to the president than loyal to veterans. Everyone can see that this is. Collins is especially a veteran. Alex Preddy, Veterans of America. This is horrible. Preddy began to work for the VA as a research assistant in 2014, graduated from the University of Minnesota. He had a bachelor's degree in biology, society, and environmental, and later returned to school to become a registered nurse. Called for many lawmakers and Republicans have called for a thorough investigation. Shortly after his death, House Veterans Affairs Committee ranking members Rep. Mark Dacona of California issued a statement. Y'all, this is horrible, and I gotta say, I'm really struggling to wrap my head around all of it. I think it is just. I think sometimes people get out of their lane and cause things to be worse, and they're trying to do good. Yes, the chief will be going to trial. However, it is on hold due to a lawsuit in the courts against Homeland Security for the officers to testify. Yep, it is. And it's going to be a while. But I will tell you that, in my humble opinion, I think if they would have flipped the charges and only went after Gonzalez with the 10 children and then went after the police chief with the 29, Gonzalez may have been found guilty of something. I think they overcharged. I after hearing what the chief did and how the chief responded or didn't respond, I think is a far more potential for success in a case than Gonzalez's was. And that's my humble opinion. But you only are as good as your supervisors, and you're only as good as your training. And it appalled me to hear that at that time, only 50% of the police department, Uvalde PD, had the alert training. How can you hold them accountable if they've not had the training? Think about it. You can't. You can't. There's nothing that can be done at this time to really fix what happened that day. There's no amount of money. There's no amount of anything that's going to make this better. Will it hold people accountable where you can? Yes. There's a lot of people that need to be fired. And some people go, well, the police officers, they should be able to resign so they can keep their pension. Well, why should they be able to keep their pension if they themselves broke the rules and the protocol? If they themselves did not obey their training, if they themselves did not act, or if they did or did not act in a way that would have saved lives, no life. I'm sorry, you lose your pension. Dude, you lose your pension. In my humble opinion. If it was a blatant act. If it was not a blatant act, then we still need to talk about it. But there's a lot of people that need to be gone. And the fact that one of the guys was on the board, city council, and they finally got him off. But y'all, the fact that city council and the way they handled that was, to me, unacceptable. But they were bound by law. They could not do anything other than if he didn't show up 3 times in a row, they could kick him off to a city council meeting. But until then, there was nothing that they could do. And I'm like, wow, that to me is insane. I know my hair is horrible. Pray I have hot water tonight so I can wash my hair. All right. Anybody have any last words real quick before I let you go? It is almost 9:00 my time. That means I haven't, by the way, we'll be live at 10 and we're going to continue the trial we were watching today, starting at 10. Ish. I should be done by 10, but I'm going to set the live up for 10. And if I'm not, I'll push it to 10:30. June, you get to sleep in. Woohoo! June gets to sleep in. Angela, I hope you have a wonderful next couple of days. Love and appreciate you. Both of you. Y'all give it a round of applause for my mom. They are fantastic and they're awesome. And each one of you are wonderful. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And just know that our hearts and prayers are going out to each and every single one of those poor victims. I can't even begin to imagine what those families are feeling, how they're feeling. It's just deplorable. Deplorable. Out and about with Diane. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, my mods. It's been a long day. We've been live since 9 a.m. We had a couple hour break. Thank you, Haley Mouse. Rico Flores. Come back and visit us when you can and make sure you share and subscribe. Y'all, I keep forgetting. I made this. Y'all subscribe. Subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. All right, guys, we will be back tomorrow about 10 o'clock in the morning. We're going to continue with the trial. The therapy, the jurors, yes. And in some jurisdictions, actually, they do provide therapy for jurors that go through trials like this. Oh, thank you, Out and About, Diane. Thank you for lurking. I love my lurkers. Love my lurkers. Maybe I ought to make a hat that says, love my lurkers. Thank you so much for lurking. I appreciate it. I really do. And keeping me going in the background. Thank you. It helps my numbers so much. All right, guys. Kitty is saying bedtime. She's all like, her tail is flipping aggressively like, Mom, you're showing me on the camera. Put me back down. She's done. And I got to go feed Monkey Butt. My son got home. I'm sure he's fed her, but I got to go give her more food. Take care, everyone. Y'all have a great night. Mods, I love you. We'll see you in the morning. It will be later today or early tomorrow morning before I preset the next live, but we will be live tomorrow. We'll see you. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. I hope you have an awesome day. Till next time, take care.